of consumption behavior of Americans. They say it over and over again. And this really irks me. Because if any of you have ever had that $5 footlong song in your head, or switched from Coke to Pepsi, or spent your money on something that you thought would make you smarter, sexier, taller, faster, or more liked, you know that they know that Americans are nothing if not susceptible to behavior change. That's why we should challenge these statements for what they are. These dire forecasts connected to reproduction, now in the form of climate change and global warming, only serve as a justification for the implementation of coercive population control programs that sacrifice women of color's health and human rights. Let me read a quote. "In searching for our new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea of pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like. We thought that would fit the bill." This is from a publication written by the Club of Rome, an exclusive think tank made up of businessmen, academia, and world leaders. Clearly, it is the time for feminists to keep their eyes open. We need alternative frames in politics that leave population scare tactics out of the equation and address real solutions to climate change. I encourage you to consider the following 5 ideas. One is the connection between the local and the global. Some of the same powerful forces that are affecting environmental issues on the local level are the same forces that are affecting global climate change. The global nature of climate change means that our struggles are not in isolation with one another, and I would encourage us to think about new alliances, coalitions, and political solidarity. Second, that the environmental dimensions of health, we should consider the environmental dimensions of health and how women play a central role in that experience. Women experience toxic burden twofold. They often must shoulder their own health concerns as well as taking care of the health concerns of their children or the elderly. In addition, women are also spearheading a tremendous amount of effort on the local level against environmental injustice. Any dialogue about climate change must open up a space for women to contribute their knowledge and their voice. Number 3, that we should be critical of so-called solutions to climate change that encourage the resurgence of nuclear power. The reproductive effects and the release of radiation and toxic chemicals from nuclear power is real. And it is the reason to say no to nuclear power as a solution to climate change. The US nuclear industry has no regulations to protect women from the risk of miscarriages and other reproductive effects. Let me say that again. The US nuclear industry has no regulations to protect women. The resurgence of nuclear power would also bring an increased uranium mining on indigenous lands with consequent environmental pollution and other negative effects. Number 4, I think we should really consider, and I think as much as with the war in Afghanistan and everything, I think we should really think about and start talking about ending militarism in this country. Ending militarism is a powerful way to achieve reproductive, environmental, and climate justice. It is a point where our struggles converge, and the list is long. Military toxins damage the environment and harm reproductive health. Militarism increases violence against women, racism, and anti-immigration activity. Militarism robs resources from other social and environmental needs. War destroys ecosystem, livelihoods, health, and sanitation infrastructure. Militarism is also one of the biggest threats to a sustainable planet for everyone. But it's rarely ever put in the spotlight in that way. It also stands in the way for effective solutions to climate change. Not only is the US a major emitter of greenhouse gases, it burns about the same amount of fossil fuel every day as the entire nation of Sweden. But it also spends up to 30% of its annual budget in military actions to secure oil and gas reserves around the world. That brings me to my fifth and final point. I'd like to draw some attention, again, trying to go away from blaming poor people and their reproduction. I think it's time that we draw attention to the failure of corporate solutions to climate change. In the international arena, corporate needs outweigh human needs when it comes to official climate agreements. A number of mechanisms put in place by the Kyoto Protocol are doing little to reduce carbon emissions, and in fact, they're increasing poor people's vulnerability. Carbon trading schemes allow corporate guzzlers to maintain high levels of emissions if they invest in carbon capture projects. Now, the carbon capture projects are huge. They're corporately owned, and they're monocultural tree plantations that reduce biodiversity and take over the lands and forests from indigenous people. And sometimes they prevent women from collecting firewood and other plants that they need. These projects also shut the door on small-scale, non-corporate solutions that encourage control of existing forests. Bertrand Russell wrote in 1953 that there are 3 ways of securing a society that shall be stable as regards to population. The first is that of birth control. The second is that of infanticide and really destructive wars. And the third is that of general misery except for a powerful minority. This was written in 1953, and this is their plan. In conclusion, as with hunger and poverty, climate change and global warming are alarming realities that require real solutions. These solutions must shift blame away from poor women and their reproduction, and finally, challenge the corporate interests in advocating for effective and equitable climate policy.